Hey guys, I realize for some of you guys who are just getting into teching and working on the internals of your airsoft gun, I'm going to go over a quick overview of basically a tour of your gearbox. Not everybody knows the names of all the parts, and I want to help remedy that. It's just memorizing. Some things will make sense once you hear what it's called and why it does what it does, and its job. We'll just go over everything. I have the gearbox currently set up like you just pulled it out of a gun and opened it up. If you really need me to do a how to get the gearbox out of the gun video, I can. This is just for someone who has gotten the gearbox out and currently has it open. So you've just popped open the gearbox. Hopefully you would use a tool like this, something to put down inside your spring guide to keep it from shooting out the back and hit somebody or a wall or something like that. I advise that. I do not have a screwdriver small enough to fit inside. That's why I use a Allen key set. So we're going to start with this first. This is your motor. Alright. At this end, this is your pinion gear. Alright. So that interfaces with your bevel gear here, and that is what turns the gearbox. Alright, right here we have a nice spinning sleeve to cover the shaft of the motor. Most upgraded motors should have a ball bearing set inside of this piece. This will just cut down on resistance. There we go. Apparently my ball bearings were walking out on me. There we go. It spins a lot better. There we go. Alright, so this spring actually creates spring tension because the bottom of the motor grip is how you adjust the motor height or how it interfaces with the bevel gear. And you want that alignment to be perfect. So I'll show you what a perfect alignment looks like. Alright, so just like that. That is perfect alignment. Alright, if it's touching that, it's going to be grinding and whining and make really bad noises, and you can lock up your gearbox like that because it's actually rubbing the anti-reversal latches. Alright, so it'd rub them down. Alright, this is bad because you're not getting complete contact with the gear. So this would just be undue stress on the outside edge of these teeth. So that's the motor. You can get different strength motors. There's your standard motor would be a Ferris style motor, which mean standard magnets. Most Chinese guns will come with what's called a Chow Li motor. That is a motor that comes from a certain factory, and they all look exactly the same. You can tell because they're kind of that whitish, pale white color on the outside. This is a GMP motor, so this is higher quality, much higher quality. These are the motor connectors up here. These are the springs that hold the brushes in. The brushes are what I believe is what cleans and just keeps everything running fine. Correct me if I'm wrong there. I will not feel bad. I'm not an expert on motors. I usually ask for help when it comes to electrical and motor problems. Everything else mechanical I'm good with. Now, we're going to start with the upper part of the gearbox. This is your spring guide. This makes sure your spring doesn't go all wonky inside your actual gearbox. This helps guide it because your piston will actually, let's get that out of there. Actually, when it's fully compressed, it'll actually go over the spring guide. Alright, it'll go all the way back. This just helps keep it in line so it doesn't shoot out the side, like I said. So, spring guide. Spring, this is a non-linear spring. Tighter coils, looser coils, tighter coils. There you go. Alright. Next is your piston. Alright. This is your piston right here, this blue part. This is an SHS piston, lightweight. Got full steel rack right there. And this is a G&G piston head. This is their cylindrical, I don't know what they call it. They have a special name for it, but it's just their polycarb standard piston head you find in every gun they sell. Great piston head. I loved it. If you can get it for your gun, get one. They're great. So there's that. Then your cylinder, you'll notice it doesn't really want to come out. So what you'll do is you can take a screwdriver or a hex set like this and release the spring that's holding your tappet plate on. And here's the rest of your cylinder set. Now, this is your tappet spring. This is a bit bigger than any of your other springs, all right, such as your trigger spring or your trigger shuttle spring. All right, so that's what that is. Then we have the air nozzle. This is an upgraded metal one with an O-ring. Connected to that is the tappet plate. This actuates the air nozzle, allowing the next BB to be loaded into the hop-up chamber and then push it forward against the hop-up nub. Alright, so there's that. Then this is the cylinder head and cylinder. This is a chromed cylinder for a M4 carbine length barrel, 363. Alright. For anything over 400, I would advise a full cylinder or a cylinder ported behind this line right here. Alright, you don't want ports in front of that so you can get the correct amount of air, because if you don't get enough air to your barrel, you're going to lose FPS, which if I were to throw an AK length 450mm barrel on this cylinder, it would be under pressured, so it actually wouldn't be getting enough air for what it needs to do. Currently it's getting overpressured because I'm using a 300mm barrel instead of a 363. 300 would be ported right about here-ish, right about there, but it works just fine. It doesn't hurt my FPS in any way. So there's your cylinder set. Now you'll notice on your gears there's your 3 gears, and then there's this one thing over here that just kind of pushes your bevel gear out of the way. Now if you remove your bevel gear, alright, and look at that, this is called your anti-reversal latch. Just as it sounds, it will be interfacing with these cogs on your bevel gear, and it keeps your gears from turning backwards. This prevents damage to your gearbox. You obviously don't want your gears turning backwards because things could just blow up on you. Alright, so this is your bevel gear. Here are the teeth that the motor interfaces with. Here are the anti-reversal teeth. And here are the teeth that interface with the spur gear. That is the middle gear, alright? And you can actually see, if you look closely, there's a shim right there. So I believe I have 3 shims in this gearbox because it's nice and tight and well shimmed, alright? Next one, on top of the spur gear, this is the sector gear. This is the one that pulls back your piston. These big teeth right here, these are the ones that actually pull back your piston right there. Alright. Now, this piece right here is your delayer chip. Some companies just put a peg and then you have something clipped onto it, whether it's plastic or metal. G&P actually attaches their own metal disc. I prefer the system because it has a nice shape to it. It just helps with feeding if you're doing high speed. It holds your tappet plate out longer. It actually hits your tappet plate, holds it out longer before it releases and feeds the BB. Alright, so really like the G&P sector gears, unlike their bevel gears. So G&P sector gears and spur gears are really good. Alright, so keep that in mind. Now, finally, we have the G&G. You can see it maybe. This is a heat-treated gear, so it's very dark. But there's G&G on the gear. 1 shim on the bottom. This, you'll see a little bit of spiraling. It came that way stock. It was shimmed a little tight and was actually causing some wear on the gun itself. So I re-shimmed it. Everything's running a lot smoother now. These outer teeth are the one that interface with the bevel gear right here. Alright. And then these inner teeth are the ones that interface with the sector gear right there. Okay? Pretty simple, right? Oh, let me get a shim out of the way. Got a nice big shim for the bottom of the sector gear. Alright, so we have a pretty bare gearbox right now. we're going to go through the last few parts that are left on it. This would be the trigger contacts, or the trigger group, whatever you want to call it. Right here you'll see the spring. This is connecting the trigger shuttle. Alright, this is the piece that moves back and forth. So when you're pulling the trigger, it's actually doing this number right there. It's connecting your trigger contacts. Electricity's going through there and allowing your gun to fire. This is the trigger. It has one spring on it to return it, the return spring, and this has its own spring, so it should return on itself. Now you'll see this fun little peg right here I'm having to hold. That is the safety bar. So that is what kicks up and stops your trigger from allowing your gun to fire. Alright, so see how it kicks up like that? That is safe. Now you'll notice that is semi-auto. Now how do you know this? Because this is full auto, and then you move your selector plate right here. Oop, dropped a bushing. Alright, you move your selector plate here. Your selector would actually fit inside this groove in your body, and this would move this selector gear and cause everything to happen. So, sorry guys, the trigger's just being a pain in the butt. Alright, there we go. Alright, so semi-auto is right there because you can see the cutoff lever, which it allows for semi-auto, gets right up against where the cam would be on the sector gear. Can you see it? It's a cam, and that trips the, if you notice it doesn't want to turn because the cutoff lever is actually tripping it. So that is what allows for semi-auto. Alright, that's what that hole is in the trigger. That's semi-auto selector place. Alright. You have your motor wires here. Be aware your red or powered wire should always be in the front. Very few brands, I believe APS and maybe some other companies that do MOSFETs have, I think it's the Chimera or the Spectre, have the power wire in the rear, or have this reversed. This is your grounding wire. This allows for the current to flow through, and this should be in the rear. Alright. Then finally, you have 3 bushing holes on each side. This is a 8mm gearbox. So I have 6 8mm steel bushings. These wires out front, if it's a front wired gun, this is where you connect your plug and your battery. You can also have a rear wired gun where the wires go up through here and come out this hole in the back and go into the stock. Either one works. I prefer front wired, just it's simpler. I believe that is all. If I forgot something, mention it to me, and I'll make sure to make another video mentioning it. That sort of thing. But there's your tour of the version 2 Gearbox. Have any questions? Don't be afraid to ask.